So here's the thing. You see people buy stuff. They'll buy something for like $1. Okay, I'll go with $1. All right. That old like RoboCop movie where they're like, I'll buy that for $1 and all that. Yeah. The thing is all that adds up. So if like a company is going to have a big old sale, they're going to sell something for, let's go 40%. They're going to have something for 40% off. A lot of you right now are thinking 40%, that must be an amazing deal. You know? It must be an amazing deal. But who knows how they came with that? Who knows, you know? If you want to make money, you're in any business, you know, you got to play your markup. You know, now there are situations where that 40% might make it below cost or whatever, and that's a good deal. But the thing about buying stuff for only $1 is eventually only $1, only $5, only $10. You know, it can easily lead to something where you're buying something that you're justifying because it's so cheap and so inexpensive. But it's something that you don't really need, and you're only buying it because it's only $1. Now, if you can make something out of that, or if you can get that dollar out of it, go for it. But for the most part, maybe there's some way you can do better than just that. Maybe you can, maybe instead of having $1, or let's go with $5. Let's go with $5 items. Maybe instead of buying $5 items, you buy one $4 item. Okay? That's higher quality. All right? So you got these items, and instead of doing that, you got this higher quality item for less money. All right? Maybe it's going to last longer, maybe not. Maybe we're talking about food, and instead of buying $5, instead of buying $5, I don't know, junk sandwiches or whatever, some, you know, I can't think of much that's $1 anymore, you know, yeah, okay, instead of buying 5 candy bars for $5, maybe you buy a sandwich for $5, you know? At the end of the day, that sandwich is probably going to leave you fuller instead of those 5 candy bars, you know? Kind of deal, you know? But it's one of those things where it's everywhere where people will justify it because it's only $1. It's only $1. Well, are you going to make that money back? Is it worth more than $1, or is it something where you're only buying it because it's so low, you know, and it's like a penny in the street, and it's not worth picking up, kind of deal? Is it worth picking up? Is it worth the effort? Am I going to get a return on this at only $1? You know, and that applies to everything. When a business drops prices, there's usually a reason for it. Okay, so you just don't go out and you grab something as soon as prices drop, because there's a reason that those prices have dropped, you know? But there's also deals, okay? So if you're in a position where you can save that $1, you know, maybe instead of let's go $5, just to make it more realistic. Instead of spending $5 on a meal, maybe you save that up and you end up getting $30, and then you can make that Yeah, instead of spending $5 5 days a week, now we're playing different math. Instead of doing, $5 7 days a week and going out and eating a cheap meal at a restaurant, not even a restaurant, at a fast food place for like $5, maybe you do that 7 days a week. Instead of doing that, maybe you could take that $35 and buy some actual food and buy 2 weeks worth of food with that. You know, and because you're not justifying it's just $5. You know, it's just a cup of coffee. You know, it's just this and just that. You know, all that adds up, and it does in business too. Like your supplies, it all adds up. Your shipping, it all adds up. You know, that being said, you got to respect your customers. You know, if you make a mistake or if there is a loss, you got to put yourself in that customer's shoes, and sometimes you do got to take a loss. You don't got to be stupid cheap with all that. You know, some fights aren't worth fighting. Just respect that and move on. Maybe you'll sell more stuff because it'll pay for itself in the long run. But it's one of those deals where if you're doing something, because I'll go with shelving. I love using the shelving example. Instead of spending $50 on shelving, I'll spend $5 because it's going to do the same job. Because even though the $50 shelving might last, I'm kind of kicking myself here, it might last longer or it might not. Maybe the $5 shelving is a better deal than that $50 shelving. Maybe it will last longer. That's one of those deals where if you buy, maybe you instead of buying one $50 shelving, you can buy 10 $5 shelvings. You know, that'll last 70% of the life of that $50 shelf. You know, not the full term, not exactly as long, but 75%. And that's one of those things where, you know, you just don't go out and buy 10 shelvings units at $5 a piece because you can. You don't do it because of that reason. You do it because you need 10 shelving units and you want to buy it for that reason. You're not buying it because they're cheap. You know, you're not buying it just because it's cheap. You're buying it because you need that amount, and that amount's going to work for you. Maybe you can actually sell half of them. I've done that. Maybe you can actually buy more than you need and then turn around and sell it, and what you sold actually makes you a profit making those things free. You know, same thing with free. You don't pick something up just because it's free. You know, you don't play around with something just because it's free. There's a cost to everything. Even those $1, $5 just items, just whatever items, you know, just because it's there doesn't mean it makes sense. So throw it out there. But yeah, you hear it all the time. It's just $1. You know, it's like stuff adds up, you know. Like I'm saying, I'm cheap. But cheap's one of those things where if you're looking at stuff, you look at kind of through that perspective, you're going to see, yeah, you know, it all adds up. It does. Before you do something for just $1 or just $5 or just $10, you got to ask yourself, is there something better that I can be doing with this money instead of just spending it on this thing that might not be justifiable? So there you go. Yep. All right. Thanks, folks.